I'm here with Shawn. Shawn is, man, you're a dad, you're a husband, you're an entrepreneur, 6 years in the Bloomington Council.
Yeah.
City Council, Bloomington, Minnesota here. And you run just a fantastic business and you got a cool team. And I was like, I want to interview more entrepreneurs. And you came to mind as somebody who does good stuff, hard stuff. So that's why I wanted to have you in here.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Rob. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. So why don't you give us a survey? A little bit of like, if you had like 2.5, 3 minutes. Been doing this business for a while.
Yeah, grew up in it. You know, my parents started the company and, after I was done with college, looked at opportunities and saw, hey, you know what, this small business thing might actually be the way to go. And came back, talked to my parents about it, and we gave it a shot. It wasn't a sure thing that I would stay in the business or not, but we gave it a shot. And after a little bit over 10 years, I started to buy out the company and completed that during the Great Recession. So
during the Great Recession.
Really good timing there.
So mom and dad had a remodeling company.
Yeah.
And we're here in the Twin Cities.
Yep.
And you're in the South Metro and West Metro, a little bit of everything. When did your parents start it and how did they get it? Like, how did that birth? How did it happen?
So I'm actually from Duluth.
Oh.
And so my mom was working for Land O'Lakes, and she got a promotion offer, but she had to relocate to the Twin Cities here. And my dad said, okay, I support that. It's a great move for you. But I'd like to give a shot to having my own company. And so when he came down here, he went and worked for a couple home builders for a little while to get some experience, more experience in the carpentry, project management side of things. And then, a couple years later, started New Spaces.
So what year was that?
That would have been,
80s, right?
so he actually started a company in 1982, I believe, called Handyman Services. And he did small odds and end projects, put one ad in the local paper, and was busy for 3 years.
Really?
And then after those few years, he saw that there weren't a lot of companies focused on doing some of the larger projects like kitchens, bathrooms, additions, that sort of thing. So it's kind of, the industry was still pretty new at that point. And he's like, I think we need to kind of rebrand, refocus, and there's an opportunity here. And so then,
Were you around during that? Like, do you remember that? Because I was born in 82.
Yeah, well, I was around, so I was 5 when we moved here from Duluth.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's how I grew up, and the business was in our home. It was, we had the office manager in the main level office there. We had designers and my dad in the lower level. My bedroom, my brother's bedroom was on the other side of the basement. So we had the whole operation right there in the house. It was fun, and then got to know all the carpenters and the folks working out in the field. So it was.
Do you remember? So one of the things I think is interesting about remodeling and all businesses is kind of like, okay, I do it, then there's a couple of us doing it now, and I like kind of where you're going. I'd love to hear more of your story because you have an empowered team that does stuff. But do you recall what your parents and you guys as a family business, when you started to add more people to the machine, and like, what did you learn from that, and what was that like? Or anything stand out?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson I learned from my dad when he started to add people was that you're not great at everything as an entrepreneur. Hire people that are better than you at things. And so one of the first areas he found people better than him was design. So he was a great carpenter. He can still do it, still does it actually now to this day. He's almost 80 now, and he's still, swinging a hammer some days.
So he enjoys it. He's
enjoys
a true carpenter.
Yeah. He loves it. And but so he took a class because he knew he wasn't really good at drafting. So he took a class at Dakota County. Really? And in that class, he met all these young folks that were super energetic, like wanted to get going with their career, and he's like, they're way better at it than me. So he actually used it as a recruiting tool. He hired one of them, and that was kind of one of the first hires is on the design side. And then he had already hired carpenters that he had known in the industry to come and join because, as he was growing, he found the need to do that. I think the other lesson that he taught me is if you want to be treated like a professional, act like a professional, show up like a professional. His business really took off when, instead of in the evening when he was doing his sales and his proposals to clients, he wouldn't just leave the field and go to their house with, blue jeans and dirty and, hey, I just came off this other project. He'd go home, he'd shower, he'd, put slacks on, he'd put a button-up shirt on, he'd go in and say, you know what, I'm good at what I do. I'm professional. I deserve to be paid like a professional for what we're going to do for you. And obviously, you got to follow through on that promise on the back end. But, if you carry yourself that way, if you present yourself that way, people are very willing to pay for a professional to help them with their project.
So I always think you guys do your design and commitment to design, meaning that, it's not just, well, what do you want?
Yeah.
You guys really work through that. I think that's something special you guys do now. It's cool to hear that that's one of the first things you saw him change. And then you guys have some carpenters, some full-time folks.
Yep.
That's not typical in all general contracting.
Yeah.
What do you think, what are the challenges that presents to you as a business owner? What were challenges for your dad? And that's not easy.
No, so 2 parts, having the designers and really helping clients first understand what their problems are, what their needs are, what the different options are. I know you're kind of aware of this, but, we generally show people 3 different plan ideas with a variety of different budget ranges. And those, they can be tens of thousands of dollars different. And so we give people control over that budget by being able to make decisions and then help them make all of the selections as they go through that process. And then on the carpentry side, it is different from a lot of companies, that rely on subcontractors and come in and do the carpentry. But the ability of our carpenters to build a relationship with the client when we're in their home, we know we're guests there, we're there to serve them, and they trust the carpenter. They call a carpenter and say, hey, what's going to happen this week? Or, we got some family coming into town. How do we kind of make that work? And those types of conversations, the person who's going to take care of that and be in your house and working on that. And it's been a huge benefit to us. The challenge, candidly, on both the design and the carpentry side is just capacity. Sometimes we're too busy, and so things get drawn out and take maybe a little bit longer than clients want, or we won't be able to get started at the time that clients want to get started. And then, of course, we have a loyalty to our people, and so we make sure we find work for them. This isn't something where we don't have work for you this week. No, we're gonna get you your 40 hours every week. We're gonna make sure we find stuff for you. So we found a nice balance. We do have some subcontract carpentry that we can bring in if we need a crew to move a project forward faster, but we still always have that lead carpenter there that is kind of the point person for the client, overseeing everything, working with that subcontractor and any of our other trade partners.
It's interesting how many new general contractors and remodelers that I meet, and they understand that they got to get after the sales and they have to do that. But I'm surprised how few are as dedicated to educating and being the guide on the front end in design, in lifestyle. Just like, you're going to use this house.
Yeah.
You don't want regrets when you're done with it. Yeah. I think you guys I don't think I've noticed anybody else doing as good of a job as what you guys do. And, so when you go back to your dad was like, I'm not great at design. And then he goes to take some drafting classes, finds a bunch of eager young folks that are like, hey, this is it. So keep walking me through. So he gets a design. What did that look like when they first started to implement that or first tried that? Like, what did you see any of that? Struggling through it, or?
Well, and because it was my basement, so I saw it. So it was very close.
Shut up, Shawn. We're doing a design.
I want to watch TV. Go away. Go play outside.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it was great. But what I saw is that initially my dad was front and center with the client, and the designer was kind of in the background doing it, and then giving it to my dad to review, and he would present. And it was great. He had the plans, and they pick out the stuff. And I think over time, what we really transitioned to is these designers are perfectly capable of having that meeting with the client. and helping them with the decisions. And so, we've really shifted a little bit of that model for people, that they work directly with the professionals. They work directly with the designer. They work directly with the lead carpenter, who's a highly skilled individual that can see the whole project through, and on both ends, the design and the carpentry side. And so that's really kind of the model that we have now, and sort of the evolution of that. It still had, at the beginning, was very much my dad was the focus. During design, during construction, he was kind of the go-to person. And over time, we're just like, why don't you just talk with the designer? They're the ones that designing it. If you got questions, you don't need to tell me. Have me go ask them. Let's just do that. And it worked out really well.
I think it's interesting, your carpenters, you said the customer knows to go to them. When I read through your reviews, we've done a number of client interviews. I've seen folks respond to you. I've been in their houses filming this stuff and hearing them talk. It's always, we love our designer, we love our carpenter. That relationship is so huge. Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. One of the things that I think, talk a little shop about remodeling. Yeah. It feels to me that you guys are aware of lots of different things that can go wrong in a remodel, or regrets that people, I think that's kind of what I've come to, is like, if I'm going to spend, $50,000 to $350,000 to redo my house, when I get done, I want it to bring joy to me. Yeah. I want it done right. I don't want any like, oh, I should have done this.
Yep.
Like, go through some of the things that you've learned, as specific as it could be interesting, that people have regrets about when they don't have a thorough design. Like, what do you learn through that?
Well, I think in my mind, not having a thorough design is not tying the design to how they're actually going to live and use the space. And so it's easy to walk into someone's house and be like, yeah, we're going to take that wall out. We're going to do it with the kitchen. We're going to put a new window in there, and it's going to be great. And that's actually a lot of the industry, how they walk in, they start talking about, the building part of it. And we're like, tell me how you live. Like, tell me about your family. How often does your whole family come over? Oh, okay, so now we need to make sure that we have a dining space that fulfills the needs for a large family gathering. Some families may not need that, and so we work through that individually with people to design the project based on that. And we do look at a lot of options. Like I said, we generally start with 3, but almost never does a client go, oh, I want the second one. That's the one. They're like, I love this in the first one. I hate that part of it. Get rid of that nook or whatever it is. We don't need that. They like something in the second. And so the designer then comes up with what we call a working plan and combines kind of all the positives in that, also respectful to the budget where they want to be, and ultimately land and helps them work through those options. And then even beyond that, we'll take and say, because, it's easy to say you want something, right? But it's hard to say, well, I want it in there depending on the cost.
Right.
And so
we had budget constraints.
Yeah,
all of a sudden, everything changes.
Yeah. And it's actually something we see a lot in the industry, where people go to just like an architect or an independent designer, and they get their whole plans, and then they go to get pricing, and they're shocked that they're double or triple what the budget was supposed to be on that project, because it's so easy to add things in during design if you don't get that budget part of it in there. And so we're constantly updating the budget with our clients as we go through the process, and letting them know where we're at, letting them know that they're adding something. If they're adding, giving them options. If they need to pull back on the budget, we'll price different features out for them, so they know, hey, if we do that wet bar in the dining room, that's this much money that of the project, and then they can make an informed choice. They choose to either include that in the project or not. Either way is.
I love how you guys are so heavy-handed. You're so generous with the education and that process. You don't they really don't pay a ton even when they're getting started with you. And I'm not here to flatter you. I didn't call you to come in here, but it genuinely, I think what's interesting is that guys that know how to build stuff, it's like, well, yeah, you frame it up. I'll watch any of them. They just do stuff and like, well, yeah, you're just going to do that, and it's 16 on center. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do any of this. Like, where am I going to sit? Like, where's the table going to go?
Yeah.
Where do I put my camera? I don't know. It's whatever it is. And I think you guys do a good job of that.
Our clients aren't concerned about the 16 on center or that stuff. They trust that we're going to take that out. Now, we do have some engineers that we get as clients, so they ask questions like that, which is fine.
Meticulously. I think so. Two things. One, how many remodels a year are you doing? Kind of
about 30, 35.
30, 35 a year. And so you've been doing that for 27 years yourself.
Yeah.
And your dad was doing that before. I mean, you've done some work.
Yeah, we've done a few projects. Yep.
So part of why I wanted to bring you here is because I think you're absolutely killing it and you're an authority in this space. When you just think about that design and then the build and you think of how do people get to that point? What are the steps that you see to get to this where you can do more design, be more, like what are the steps a typical general contractor or the guy swinging a hammer right now and he sees where you're at, where you got a team going, you're doing 35 projects a year. Like what are some pieces that they need to know about in order to start taking those steps?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just to kind of self-identify what all the things you're doing in the company are, and then determine which of them are you really passionate about, which of them are you really good at, and which of them could you find someone else to do? Because you're going to need to free up your time if you want to grow that. So, if you're doing the design work, selling the project, building the project, all of that type of stuff, what ends up happening that I've seen is you get a project, you get busy, and then that project ends, and you're like, okay, got to find the next project now, and so it's hard to do all those.
You got to keep fed.
Yeah, and you're wearing all these hats, and you're taking all these calls, and you're trying to do all these things, and so figure out where your time is best spent, and then find someone else that's better than you at the other things to do those things and free up your time to focus on that. And then that is kind of the pathway. Maybe it's design, maybe it could be admin. I mean, it may not be design or carpentry. It may just be office management, and you aren't good and you don't like paperwork. That is a very common story in the trades. Like I hate sitting down at 9 o'clock at night and doing invoices.
Oh my gosh.
Well, maybe you need office help, and they'll do that 9 to 5 during the day. They'll take care of those. They'll answer the phone. They'll screen the calls. They'll free up that time so you can focus on those other things, and then you can add other pieces as you grow.
But that costs money. So how do you get to this point where you have money where you can start adding those things?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to invest. And sometimes, I mean, that's one of the big things is make sure you get to a point where you're profitable so you have resources to invest. And, so you can do that. And if it's truly an investment, it's going to pay off. Your freed up time to do more sales or do more production management or whatever it is will increase your margins. It will grow your business, and it will pay for itself. I mean, you're right. There's no reason to have an employee if having them doesn't cover the cost plus the overhead plus the profit for the owner.
Do you find that project management and sales are two really good places that most of them need some help along with administrative help?
I would say, in two ways. One, sales is a unique skill. And some people are really good at it. Some people aren't. But it's also extremely difficult to sell yourself. And sometimes it's easier for somebody else to sell your brand, your vision, what you provide, instead of, having that, ego and be like, we're really good at this. And then, the admin is oftentimes the easiest place to start because, one, it's probably going to be slightly less expensive. But two, most of the people I talk to, it's the thing that they enjoy the least. They don't want to be doing that paperwork. They don't want to be typing things. They don't want to be, doing IT and like what's wrong with the computer here and all of those types of things, or just getting the mail, opening it, going through it.
It's unreal how many, we're a little marketing company. We have 7 people. And the amount of screwing around I have to do is unreal. Yeah. And then I think about, you guys do stuff in the real world. You build things. You have to go get boards and put them places. Yeah. There's a lot of screwing around that has to be done, and that'll gobble up your time.
But that's my other advice. Don't go get boards. Have somebody deliver them. I mean, your time to go get that is way too valuable. Just, have a good relationship with a good lumber yard and have them deliver it.
Do I dare ask you who your favorite lumber yard is?
So I think, we work a lot with Dakota County Lumber. Yeah. I know you work with them as well. So.
I love I like Sunny. We've learned so much. We did some video with them. They're fantastic. And I love how passionate they are about that perfect delivery thing and that they're trying to get nailed in. And
Well, what we love is Andy, the individual that we work most directly with there. I mean, he's always on the spot. He's always great with his quotes. He can answer our questions when we're looking for something different or unique. He can help us source it. I mean, they provide a great service. So, and that for us, what we've always found with the lumber yards is that person is the most critical link for us, because if they get stuff right and it shows up right on the job, it makes our life so much easier. But if that lumber isn't there when the carpenter's there, it's kind of hard to build without the lumber. Oh my gosh. Otherwise you just shoot nails into the air. And
So go to Dakota County Lumber with the perfect delivery.
Yeah.
We've got 35 a year going pretty well here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got a question then. So you were talking about your dad. He wasn't great at design. He found some folks. Then they were kind of over his shoulder and started to do that. Well, that's different than you've got a sales team now.
Yeah.
Did he have salespeople before you kind of came along, or what? What were the commitments to a salesperson?
Yeah.
What did you learn through that? Because that's not easy to find good salespeople. And
so actually, he was the salesperson. That was his unique skill.
Like that.
Yeah. He grew up learning sales actually from my grandfather, his father, who owned a store in Two Harbors, a clothing store, and so that's where he kind of cut his teeth. And I remember a story he always told me was he had an individual come in and needed a suit and bought a suit, and it was his first sale. And he was super proud, super happy about it. And he was like, "Hey, Dad, did I do a good job?" He's like, "I sold him this suit." He's like, "Well, no, he came in to buy a suit. Did you sell him a shirt? Did you sell him any ties?
People don't even know.
You just took an order.
Catch an order.
You happened to be here when he took the order." So, and it was, a lesson my dad, always shared with me and other people that, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, like trying to convince people of stuff they don't need. It's in a good way of trying to identify what they do need and what would be helpful to them and ask them those questions. And if at the end of the day, the only thing the individual wants is a suit, if that's all that they need, they got plenty of ties and shirts and everything, great, then that's what they bought. That's perfect. Because we've all experienced bad salespeople where they're doing too much of the trying to upsell and all that. We've experienced that, and nobody likes it. Nobody enjoys it. But if you do it from a sincere point where you're really trying to help that person make sure that, they get everything they need from the experience at your store, then it moves forward. So
it's funny, the tuition of regret. Like, to be on the other end of a remodel and go, "Oh, I really wish they would have talked to me about a steam shower." Or, I didn't even know that was a thing. People don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. You're the guide. You have these ideas of all the problems they might have. They might only tell you some. You have an idea of all these solutions they might like, but they don't know. And if you don't cast a little vision and ask some more questions, so that's interesting. Your dad was geared for sales. Sounds like he had thousands of sales interactions and so a contracting business based on a person with scale or sales skills.
Yeah.
And then, so he then, I'm assuming then, just help us.
So he went, and what the first sort of iteration is, he had the designers that kind of worked behind him, and then they started to work directly with him, so they'd do things together. And then we actually did, for probably about a decade, we had a model where the sales design was one role. Mm-hmm. So the designers were the salesperson, and they would go out and do the initial meetings and talk through things with people, kind of get an idea if this is going to make sense. Because as you know, a lot of our processes, we need to work on the front end before we get even into design on, what's the budget going to be? Where are you comfortable? Where, financially, what can you
Which is hard, because the customer wants to be like, well, how much does it cost and how little can I spend?
Yeah.
And you're like, well...
And, how much does what cost? I don't even know. But we can give you some guidelines, we can give parameters to different projects and let people know what those are going to be. And when we're in a house, we can help them better. And so the designers were doing that for a long time. And then it was actually probably it was just after the recession. We actually split those roles.
Like 10, 11.
Yeah, that area. And so that we have our salespeople, our homeowner advisors that now go in, talk with people, and help them understand the entire process that we're going to help them go through, and help them with budgeting. And then if all of that matches up, if the process feels like a good fit, if the budget lines up with what they can do and they can accomplish their goals or most of them within that budget, then we enter into a design agreement, and we put right in there that we're going to bring plans back within that budget, and if we don't, we'll refund your design fee. We guarantee it, and because we're not bait and switching anyone, we're just trying to help you make good decisions. Now, do some clients spend more money than that? Of course.
Yeah.
They start talking to a designer, ideas start to be generated, but again, like, okay, but if we want to add that, that's going to add 5, 10, 20,000, whatever it is, to the project. Do you want to do that? Do you want to keep that in scope or not? And they either decide to or not. Yeah, it's totally up to them.
Cool. I think it's like the best part of HGTV when you can really it's my home and I know how much it costs.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool thing. So he had, so then it sounds like he had the designers. He did a lot of the sales. You guys eventually shifted to where the designers would do the sales. And then you just brought up this is like recession time. And you said that's around the time when Shawn came home from college.
It was about a decade after I got home from college that the Great Recession hit, but it was part of the process of buying out the company we had started, and then. Okay,
so you came back. You were working in the business, or were you doing other things, or what?
No, I've only worked at one place in my life, and that's for my family company.
From my bed, in the basement.
Yeah. Well, and it was funny because when I was first elected to the city council, I didn't even think about this, but a city council member is actually an employee of the city.
Oh.
And I had to go fill out employment paperwork. Never done it before in my life.
Employer.
Previous. I'm like,
Dad.
Yeah, Mom and Dad. At the time I owned the company then, and so I was like, I'm my employer.
That's funny.
And they're going through all this stuff and explaining things, and I'm like, wow. Okay. So, because candidly, I had admin people that took care of that with all of our new hires. So I wasn't, intimately involved in it. And as the owner and due to the corporate structure of it, a lot of the benefits that we offer to employees, I'm not eligible for. So I had never filled them out and all that stuff. So
no, really, you're a good election. Yeah. So how many times have you been 2 elections? Three elections.
Yeah.
And so what years were they?
17, 19, and 23.
Okay.
Are we in 24?
And you're on until 26 right now, and then
I'm on until the 25. Yeah, not going to be that.
and so that if anyone listening to this, it's Bloomington. Yeah, Bloomington is a pretty happening spot. I mean, you guys, what's the population? Just give us a quick rundown.
Just over 90,000 people, 4th largest city in the state.
Airport, Mall of America, tons of industry, tons of multifamily individuals. I mean, everything.
Yeah, very strong mix of single-family homes. One of the biggest claims to fame we have is we have more park space than per capita than any other community. We just got an amazing park system. It helps that we're right along the Minnesota River, so we have a National Wildlife Preserve right there. I mean, it literally walking distance from the Mall of America. And if people don't know, and it still surprises me sometimes, but it's the most visited place in the country.
Really?
Yeah, over 32 million people a year visit the Mall of America.
Well, and you guys have done a good job of, genuinely, not to have you come in here and flatter you, but I think when I look at Bloomington, you guys have lots of tensions at play, and you guys run a good ship. It just seems, are there things in every city and every town and every state that you could either get politically all up in arms about, or just there's decisions that need to be made? It was funny when I was thinking of interviewing you, I'm like, I wonder what Shawn's pettiest city council gripe that somebody has brought to you. What's the silliest thing somebody has walked in and be like, get me a Whopper.
I'm not getting into that, Rob.
And that's what I concluded.
Every concern is taken very seriously, and we worked our best to address it. One of the things, though, that I will say on those lines is I think people very much misunderstand the power of a city council member. I mean, the fact that your neighbor doesn't mow their lawn and we have an ordinance about the height of it, I mean, I can't just make them be a good neighbor. I can't make them do that. We have an ordinance. We got staff that works with people to bring them into compliance. But this is not a felony level offense, not mowing your lawn. We're not going to send the police and arrest them or anything like that. We're going to try to get them to understand that, hey, you know what? You're really upsetting your neighbors. And do you really want to do that? And, sadly, there are a handful of people in any community that just don't care. Yep. And it's really tough to deal with. And it's, it was out at National Night Out last night and talking to some folks, and that came up because they have a property, and I was like, and I explained it, and it's just so unsatisfying for everybody involved. For me to be like, I can't fix that. I can't make them do it. I wish I could. And they're like, why aren't you doing more? And like, we're doing as much as we can, but at the end of the day, it's just the lawn.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying it's a petty gripe, because the lawn, I mean, it was not just like, hey, we went away for 2 weeks and it got long. It was constantly always way overgrown, and then weeds are creeping everywhere, and it was and all sorts of exterior maintenance.
It's a lot of tensions. If you think of all the tensions, all the little things, that's what I was like, I bet, and I like your answer. I like that everybody, because if you're there and you're a taxpayer, your concerns do matter, no matter how silly it feels to some people. But well, I want to get more into that in a minute here. So you start buying out the company. That means that you got all these tensions of, you're the young guy, you're the son, you're the spoiled brat coming in here to take over. That's as bad as it could be. What went well? What sucked? What'd you learn? And what would your dad tell you did right and wrong?
So I think the one thing we did right is we talked about that up front. And so, like I said, I didn't start that process until at least 10 years after I got back from college.
That's a lot. That's good.
And so, and I started in a position actually doing some marketing and some admin stuff. And that helped the company grow, because
at that MySpace.
I was doing MySpace. So, and because we had to actually grow the company to fit me into it, just like we were talking about earlier. But how do you afford that? Well, the way we could afford me to be in the company too was we had to grow it. And so I had to take some things that my dad was doing, and we had to do some more marketing and advertising to get some more business so he could go sell stuff. And
interesting.
And but I was extremely, particularly once I started to move more into some of the production area, because we made sure that I worked in kind of all areas. Like, I've actually sold projects. I've actually project managed. I've done all phases of the company, so I understood what they were. But when I did, I didn't come in and be like, hey, you know what? I'm son of the owner. I got this fancy college degree.
This cool idea we should do.
We're going to do this. I was always like, what is the data showing us where we're having challenges? Now I need to go work with my team and find out, like, what do you see here? Like, we're having cost overruns in paint. What's happening in paint, instead of me coming up with this and like, you guys have to have this checklist and you have to do this and you have to do that and make sure that you control this, and we can't approve anything like that. I worked with everyone else to create that. Maybe I guided it, had to guide it a little bit, but it was not just me coming in and telling people we're doing things different now. And a lot of it was just very much just based on normal stuff you do to build trust with any person. And I knew that I had to build that trust with people.
That's huge. So many people want it so quick. It's funny. I'll get people to reach out, because I talk to all these budding entrepreneurs, almost too many of them, right? And they want it fast. And everybody just thinks, get the plan, go, spend a ton on ads, we'll get there. And it's like, my pastor at Eaglebrook Church said a thing. He's like, I think it takes a decade to get great at something. Like, whether it's the 50,000 casts to catch a musty, or 10,000 swings to get your thing. And I think that the fact that you came back for a decade to earn the trust and credibility with your team members, that's huge. That would have been hard. I mean, were there some things that you like remember being like, why did I do that?
I'm sure there are plenty of them. And I'm not thinking of one off the top of my head, but I know, because I've said this before, I'm like, just because it's my idea doesn't mean it's a good idea. And frankly, the person in this company who's had the worst ideas is probably me. And so we have done some I have done some, astronomically stupid things. I apologize that I'm not thinking of what they are.
Yeah,
so I'm not trying to not share. You should have sent that question.
I should have sent you emails going, these are the juicy ones.
Maybe I'll come back to it. At some point I'll remember and be
let's call some people. Let's ask
what
them
did Shawn do?
What are Sean's biggest failures?
What did he do that was really dumb? So
you buy it out, you get going. Now, you guys were doing more marketing. You were doing stuff to grow. So if we fast forward now, you got a handful of carpenters, a handful of salespeople, and a handful of designers. Talk to me what you have learned about sales and marketing over this period, because I think it's always interesting. You guys do great in-person events. Every time you guys execute on a project, you guys are like, we're doing video tours and photos and open houses, and you guys, everybody, their clients love them so much that they let them do shows in their homes.
Hey, can we open it up to the public? We'd like to have, hundreds or over 1,000 people walk through your house that you just remodeled. They're like, yeah, sounds great.
To show your bathroom to like 2 million Facebook videos right now.
Bathrooms are one of the most difficult to get people, but photos and videos maybe a little easier, but yeah.
But what have you learned between, we'll do things with Facebook ads and Google ads and website and photo and YouTube, and then you've got these shows, and then you do the open houses and the parade of homes, and you were the president of the Builders Association. Yeah. Help us, just frame up over the next however long you'd like to about what have you learned about sales and marketing for the remodeling machine that you built here?
Yeah, I think our first principle is education. We're there to educate the client. One of the things in remodeling is that clients think about these projects for years, and they may be at a different point in their journey of thinking about it. And so we try to have opportunities for them. If they're like, man, someday I'd like to redo my kitchen or my bathroom, we've got opportunities for them to come see some projects online, to look at projects. We've done more with the Matterport, where they can walk through the project and kind of get their own sort of 3D tour of it. And so we're really trying to help people, whether they're at the early stage and what does it look like, to, hey, we're ready to move forward and have a conversation with people. And then, like we talked about earlier, our process there is very much like, okay, tell me more about your life, your family, your house, how long do you plan to stay here, so that we can provide solutions that make the most sense, or we can provide information for you to choose which way you want to go.
And I love how your team and you guys, on a drop of a pin, can turn around and start teaching. I think, and not only do you do that, but you guys do that in video. You do that at shows. You do that in conversation. Genuinely, I think too many entrepreneurs don't understand that in order for you to always be selling in some way, you should always be helping people go from here to there. And that means you got to be the guide. And that means you got to educate and teach and inform and be generous with your attention. What are some ways, how does that live? And you mentioned a couple of them, but go back again. In 2023, 2024, what are the things you guys are doing to help be generous on that education side? Kind of go through the list of things you guys do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do now. Online is obviously a significant thing. So making sure we got a good online presence. We talk about the projects, don't just show some photos of it, but try to tell a little bit more story.
Talk about the projects.
Talk about the project, talk about the client. One of the things that we find is that if people identify with the client, they identify with the project because they see kind of similar needs or something like that. So we work with a lot of families with kids. The family's growing. The house isn't working for that family dynamic anymore, so we need to help transform that so it's going to work for them. We also work with a number of people that are empty nesters and the families, but they're coming back for different events and things like that. But how they use that house when they were raising the family is very different than how they're using it now that they're getting a little bit older. And then we do talk about issues just to make it a safe environment for people. They want to stay in their house. Yep. They want to
so Bjorn can sit and hammer that aging. And you guys educate your salespeople.
He's got the certification, the aging in place specialist from the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. So he's very well trained in that. He can have those conversations. Our designers are all familiar with that, making sure that we look at opportunities for that if it's a concern. One of the other things we do let people know is it's not just about aging. Some staggering number of people will, tear an Achilles. My wife's done it. Oh, yeah. And in my own house. And, my dad built a ramp out the front door. And so we have a hilled yard, and she almost went flying off of it one time. It was so bad. I was like, oh my God, I just lost my wife. This is no good. So, but, people don't think about it. We have a 2-story house and she can't put pressure on one of her feet. And so, how does she manage in that house, and how does anybody, because, it's not a quick thing. And so just thinking through those things, I mean, I'm not saying you got to like totally transform your house or anything, but just little things that would make it more convenient for you if you are in such a position that.
But you guys are ready to ask. I always think, if sales is about, you got people with problems, you're the solution, you've got a process and proof, and there's a result that they're going to have. One of the things I've realized is so many people, they have the one problem they're aware of, but they don't even know some other problems that might be there. And if you don't scratch at those, you don't get to know them. Also, when it comes to the results or the outcomes on the other end, they don't know what's possible. And so if you don't cast a little vision and show them some of these options, it doesn't happen. And so you guys do that, again, you guys do video tours of the properties. You do Matterports, 3D scans. There's not a project that you're proud of that you let slip through your fingers. Not that you're not proud of everything, but you guys capitalize on your projects to show them. And I think that's huge.
We show everything, including, I mean, we've done like 3 projects with stair railing parts. And they're amazing, cool photos.
They really are cool.
It's just, I'm like, and we joke around, we're like, I guess we're going to start a stair railing portion of our company.
But is coming to mind.
Yeah. I mean, and they're just fantastic, yet they're also functional, and they add safety to the house. They add openness to the house. And so, they're great. And we feature those in addition to additions and the whole main level remodel. So we want people to see stuff at all sorts of different sizes because, everyone has a different budget and a different need. And that's fine. That's great. That's actually where we work best is working with people like, okay, let's figure out what the right project for you is.
And when it requires the extra calorie, I think you guys are the best at that. I think knock everything down and figure. I'm sure you'll take those projects too. But so talk to me about oh man, I had a great question I was just going to ask there. But so you're always showing the projects and stuff, but you've had a commitment to the Parade of Homes Remodelers Showcase. Talk to us about how often you've been in that. How have you approached that over time? You guys are doing open houses. You're showing things. There's times where you go in and out of that and whatnot. But talk to me about that commitment that you guys have, and what have you learned through it?
I mean, the online stuff is great, but the ability to just walk in and tour a house, talk with people, can't be beat. And so we're in the Remodeler Showcase, Minneapolis St. Paul Home Tour. Actually, this weekend we're in the Luxury Home Tour. So we do a lot of those things where we can bring people in and show them because we are proud of them, and it is, amazing that our clients allow us to show them.
How do you do that? Very frankly, somehow you
do a great job for the people. It's that easy. You do just a really great job, and they're like, we want you to be successful. We want you to go help other people transform their home. And so if we keep doing that, they keep letting us do it. And so it
seems like you guys care. It seems like you take time to let them know that you care about them. You guys do some fun little events, and you're always eating goofy Swedish Finland stuff with Bjorn or what you got? Crawfish. That's what it was.
Crawfish. Yeah, we do a number of things with our clients throughout the year, just to get together, say thank you to them, have some fun, and Those always work well. It's just showing people that we really, truly appreciate them as people. The relationships that are built are amazing because, particularly for Bjorn and Jennifer, the homeowner advisors, I mean, they may have been working with these people for like 2 years from the original idea that they might transform their home to working through budgets. And, we have some clients like, okay, that budget's not going to work for me right now. But they'll call us back a year or two later and say, hey, we've been saving up and here's what we think and let's reconnect. And which just shows us so much, that they have so much trust.
Same thing happen. That's so huge.
Yeah.
And what's hard is that's not predictable. Like you have to commit to behaviors in your business and systems to keep doing that stuff, knowing that this potential 2-year, 3-year cycle will land in your lap eventually. I mean, you get people that'll do the design stuff too, and then they don't close with you right away. You sit there and you're like, okay, is this $200,000 going to come through or not?
And then they call us up, they're ready, and people have lives and things come up, and so things shift a little bit. But we, get back to your question about the marketing and the sales side. I mean, we track all that stuff, and not in a an insincere way, but, we have a system to remind us to follow up with people and check in with them and see what's going on, see if anything's changed, and we're respectful. We ask, all right, if I follow up with you again, when would that make the most sense so we can help you? And, so we, it doesn't just happen. We manage that process because we do know that they're in different points. And one of the amazing things is, so we have those people that maybe we met with, maybe budget or timing was something else that came up wasn't right for them. But you know what they do? They still come to our remodeler showcase and reconnect with us and say hi and, hey, we're still thinking about that project, not quite ready for it. So they're actually taking intentional actions to stay connected because we have those events, because we are out there doing that education, showing off the work, helping people understand what they could do with their home. And so, again, that's just our big focus is providing those opportunities for people to learn. Yeah. And we recognize that what we do it's not a one-stop sale. It's not a quick thing. It's a long-term decision.
Invest in the relationship and invest in helping them and guiding them and equipping them. That's super. And then I like that intentionality of, hey, is it all right if I follow up? And then you guys are nudging them. Yeah. Just being there. It's always amazing how many things it's what retargeting or remarketing where you're like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot I was looking at that. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. And there's some interesting things there. But so you're running the company. What goes really well when you kind of have your hands on the steering wheel? What turns? You said there's this little recession that showed up. Yeah. Talk to me about the turns in the business that you've seen and navigated.
Well, the recession was huge. Building permits in the Twin Cities metro area dropped by 75%. Our business was cut in half. Oddly enough, we actually did more projects year over year. They were just half the size or less. They just the bigger projects sort of went away, and we were doing some smaller projects. And we were actually well positioned to do that because we always had historically been able to do those well. It's just we didn't have enough of them to make up for some of the larger projects that went away. And but I think we took that opportunity. We refined systems, became more efficient, and came out of it very strong.
And remodeling's kind of defensive in a way too. So if you're not buying new houses, you can't get interest rates, can't get lending power, whatever that is. They kind of say, okay, well, I want to like being here a little bit more.
We're seeing that right now. There's just the inventory of existing and new homes is not very strong. And, if you're not liking your home right now, remodeling's a very good direction to go. It is kind of the option. And if you've got a low interest rate on your mortgage and you have the ability to, afford or finance an addition or a major remodel or something like that, you can do that right where you are. Plus you get all the benefits of, you got the same neighbors that you like. You've got all the things your
kids are.
Yeah, you don't have to move.
Moving sucks.
Well, moving's not fun, and it's expensive. Yeah. But with everything you got to do there, and buying and selling houses with all the costs and closing costs and realtor fees, the whole thing is very expensive. And so if you look at remodeling, you're like, well, if I move, I'm already into this thing like 30, 40,000, and if I remodel, how do I come out?
It's interesting. The real estate fees, the closing fees, all of that adds up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So that was a turn that hit. So you're saying the economy went down, got smaller projects. You were nimble enough to keep that going. That you nailed that pretty well. What other turns of? You had COVID.
Yeah, and that was interesting, fascinating.
I thought you guys did a really good job of that.
Phone stopped ringing. Every client in design called and said, let's hold off. We don't know what we're doing. So, and every client in production said, you're still going to build my project, right? We tore out their kitchen. Some of them literally, we had torn out their kitchen within the last couple of weeks. And they're like, you're coming back to finish, right? Wow. I need a kitchen. These poor people, they have nothing to do. And we had no idea. Yeah. To be honest, we had no idea what, the federal government and the government was going to decide in terms of our industry if we could continue to work, and ultimately we could, and which was good. We could finish those projects, but we dealt with two things. One, we've shifted our marketing immediately. Actually, a couple weeks after things started to hit was going to be the Remodeler Showcase, which is our number one
That's right. That was
event
right
on our marketing event. And the Builders Association canceled it because having an event with a bunch of people in an enclosed space at the time was not going to make sense. And we immediately shifted, we took it online and we developed a whole new format for all of our education that we did in our showroom, all of the open houses. We did the happy hour home tour. We'd show different projects, and that's where we learned about Matterport and how to go through and show people these projects and do that educational stuff. It all just went online, and we encouraged, if people do enjoy it, to have a glass of wine or a beer while they're there. If you don't, have water or coffee or whatever your preference is. But it was a fun, engaging event, even online. And we had several people that kept coming to many of them just finished up a project last year with one of them in Minneapolis. And then because of the time frame, we were able to show that in the Remodeler Showcase, show her project. So, nice little addition, kitchen remodel in Minneapolis. And so those events still happened, and we still use some of that stuff. We moved all of our design and sales into a Zoom meeting. And we still use some of that because, what we found is our clients are busy, and not for every meeting, not for most meetings even, but for some meetings, it's very convenient for our clients to just jump onto that, to go through an update on specs and plans, and here's a check-in of where we're at this week, and let them know. And then on the production side, we just work with our clients, and we said, hey, we're going to be in this space, and you try to stay in that space, and when we need to talk, we'll go outside and we'll do it that way. And we did change a little bit in terms of our production, that, instead of having a carpenter and an electrician and a plumber on site, we just try to minimize the number of people at one time during COVID. And but then as things opened up and became more comfortable for people, we went back to our normal production. And a lot of what we did was just ask our clients what their comfort level was.
I was just going to mention that.
People were all across the board, and that's fine. And so we just respected, where are you at and how do we help you through this so that you feel comfortable? And everyone had a different thing. I mean, we had clients with health conditions, and so they were very concerned about it. And, and other people were young and healthy, and if I do get it.
That was the challenge. It was it got politicized, and then it was everybody, how do you even know? And meanwhile, us business owners, we want to serve you well, and we want to help you, and we want to honor you. And I thought you guys did a really good job of knowing that people are all over the place, taking it serious.
Well, we didn't want to disrespect anybody about wherever they were at, and so it worked out. It worked out well, and the reality. So right after COVID hit, I sat down, actually probably in a Zoom call, to be honest, with my team, and we're like, okay, what the heck is going to happen here? And I said, here's one of two things is going to happen. This is either going to be like after 9/11, or this is going to be like the Great Recession. After 9/11. Because of travel reductions and things like that, people cocooned, they stayed in their space, and they were really oriented towards their family and doing things with their family. And so they invested in their houses. They invested in their lifestyle to make those houses work for that. And we had, a nice, almost, probably 6-7 year sort of boom in housing and in remodeling. And it's like, so if we have COVID and people aren't traveling, are they going to do the same thing that they did there? They get cocooned. And that actually is kind of more the line that it went in remodeling, is people were in their house and then they're working from home, and then they're like, I really like this house.
Why don't we try this?
Well, we do this, and tremendous amount of disposable income for people because they weren't traveling, they weren't going out to eat as much. They were probably doing some pickup and things like that. Everyone was really trying to help their neighborhood restaurants through everything. So they're still spending some money there, but they did have additional income, and they invested in their home and, home offices, kitchens with desk areas, just things like that.
So both turns you described, you got through and actually had nice lifts in it. What other turns in the business that you've had to navigate around, or external, internal? Just what are things that?
I think the biggest one that we've had that was internal was just sort of a transformation in our people. As you mentioned earlier, we've had people nearly 30 years and at the point of retirement. And then we're growing as well. So we've got a bunch of people that are maybe looking to retire. And frankly, they became very easy for me because they were super good at what they did. We knew what they were doing. And then, you
created a monster.
Yeah. And then we had to bring in new people and train them. And so just, helping people get up to speed, working with our employees, investing in them, getting them to
Are there any differences between a guy that's been there 30 years and a new one?
No,
are there some
identical?
Are there some differences between all of us generations, between the extras, Isn't it funny how different everybody is?
And I'm going to be honest. So I know a lot of people talk about like not enough people going into the trades.
Yeah.
We are honestly seeing younger people go into the trades and bring in a different level of sort of process to it. The whole notion of, that's what you do if you can't go to college, it's gone.
No.
We have one carpenter that has a 4-year economics degree, super smart guy. Loves carpentry, wants to be a carpenter, but he's bringing that economics mindset and training to construction and carpentry, and clients absolutely love him.
That's cool.
And he's a newer carpenter, so he's learning the skills. But for the clients to say, "Hey, this carpenter," because he's not the lead carpenter, he's just helping out on the jobs, and they're like, he's so great. He's so conscientious, and he's always just letting us know what he's doing, and they just absolutely love him.
That's cool.
And he's meticulous about things. And we're sort of seeing a really nice group of young people coming into the industry. Now we need to teach them some skills. We need to teach them carpentry and things like that. But I always say we can teach carpentry. But I can't teach a positive attitude. I can't teach work ethic. I can tell you, hey, you're showing up late. There's going to be consequences if you don't do that. But that's not the company I want. I want the person who's going to show up on time without me having to tell them that. If I'm having to tell you that, we've already lost.
It's more about values and mission, and there's competencies in here, but. That's fine. That's huge. I think that's cool. It's funny. So we're in Lakeville, which is pretty much almost the most southern suburb. And if you drive from here to Owatonna, I'm always amazed how many castles there are. Just gigantic acreage spots. They're big old company trailers, and they're big old company. Like, folks, I always tell people, it's funny. I talk to the accountants. I'm like, if you go into the trades and you do the work ethic, just go in and learn the business. And if you persist in it, and you just continuously improve, you're going to make huge money, whether you're an employee, whether you get into the union, whether you start your own business, because it's a supply and demand problem. Like, there's just, and it's like, not only did not enough people get into it, but like, I don't know what your home ec class was like. I didn't learn how to do a lot of, let's go change my HVAC. How do I clean my AC? YouTube does some things, but.
I sewed a pillow or something like that, which is great.
Soak a toa, but I don't know what,
I remember in wood shop, we made a little dog and put some hooks on it, so it was like a key holder. So I think my parents still have it at their house. So. It's
the same as rewiring all the electrical things going.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, this is boring. I need to get into politics.
Yeah. I was like, I have too much free time running my own business and growing it. So
what urged you to run? What continues to urge you to do that and help us understand what's underpinning that?
So a big part of it came out of the work that I did with the Builders Association. You had mentioned that I was president of that. It's actually a decade ago now, in 2014. But, at the time, there were some big efforts at the legislature to make some very significant and expensive changes for single-family homes. And so as
code-wise,
they would have required interior sprinklers in all houses, which would have cost somewhere around $25,000 a decade ago to do. We already have very safe houses with interconnected smoke detectors, egress windows. I think the code has fixed the safety issues for the most part. Certainly they're very different in multifamily and commercial buildings where you got multiple stories and things like that. But so anyways, I got involved in that, saw a lot of other things in terms of land use planning, even just things like the warranty on a large multifamily made it so that developers would only build apartments and not condos. So there was the lack of the opportunity for a ownership opportunity. And I know a lot of people used to buy a condo as their starting place, or people would buy a condo as their sort of end of, place. And, they're very difficult to build in this state because of the law. So I got involved a lot of that in those types of discussions as president of the Builders Association, and then recognized that, frankly, a lot of those land use and some of those requirements are done at the city level. And that's actually a lot of what a city does is approve development projects, review and approve those. And so that was kind of the big thing is I want to do everything I can to make it so that there are opportunities for people to afford a good place to live. I mean, it doesn't have to be a palace. I mean, people don't need a lot. They just need a safe, decent place to live.
Really, you just need it at any level.
Yeah.
It's just, can there be supply?
Yeah. And then I also see in the industry where even today, almost impossible for a builder to build an entry-level house. If you want a truly like entry-level $250,000, $300,000 that you're going to be able to afford without making six figures, you're really looking at an existing house somewhere. Bloomington has opportunities, so it's actually part of the housing stock in Bloomington with those Ramblers that were built.
All those, so many of them.
And so I looked into that. I also just saw that I think I was fairly successful at the Builders Association, had been on other boards, had been an entrepreneur, and said, I think I have some skills and understanding of how to lead an organization that I might be able to share with the city. So, I took a chance. And
those are some cool issues that you mentioned there. Like, those are all things that could have easily been, well, it's not like they're fixed and done, but there are things that are easy to get wrong if you don't know, if you don't have perspective of at least knowing something about the building side and the supply side. I'm always, I have a little, we always joke, I get very suspicious of I would call them bureaucrats, but just people that haven't ever been in the business of bringing something to market. Like, I get pretty cynical of that. And, but to know that people are, but there's two sides to it too. You also have to be a good steward of everything.
And that really is, there is some level of balance. And I just want to make sure also that the voice of, those folks that are looking for a place to live is heard within that conversation. Because so many things that I see are really, really, truly well-intentioned. I mean, energy efficiency is absolutely imperative for us to be designing and building houses with that in mind. The building code is very prescriptive. It tells you have to have this much insulation, you have to have windows of this value, you have to build your walls this way. It just tells you that, as opposed to allowing the builder to go, hey, you know what, based on this lot, here's my best way, and I can actually get more out of doing something different with appliances and lighting and things like that. Or I could do geothermal and not have that much insulation and offset costs, all of those types of things. So, it's not really a city issue, but it was stuff that we worked on and talked with the state level about in terms of the code of, very well intentioned. I'm not against it. Just want to find a way to do those things in a minimal way. And I also think at the end of the day, people being able to own a house is good in and of itself. And you look at any measure of anything in a community, people's health, the success in academics and schools, home ownership drives a ton of that, or at least decent, safe housing that people can afford. But, right now we see so many people paying 50% of their income for rent. How are they ever going to get ahead? If we can't provide housing that they can afford, nothing happens. They don't get to turn that over to the next generation. They don't get to invest in their kids. They're working two jobs and they're not there. All of these problems largely due to the cost of housing. Not the only thing.
What is it the constraint? So this, and you're free to make good statements, bad statements, whatever it is, right? Real opinions. What is it that's getting in the way of the housing supply? What are some things that Because as a Thomas Sowell reading Milton Friedman, I think there's one answer, and it's supply. To me, it's supply, and all we've done is handed people, here's money for buying more houses.
Yep.
And we bailed out a bunch of people and, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. But help, from your perspective, enlighten us on something.
I think you're absolutely right. It's supply. The former Governor Dayton had a commission that looked into this. At that time, we were in the state of Minnesota, 50 to 60,000 housing units undersupplied.
That's back then.
And it only gets worse every year. And there's just a multiple number of factors that lead to that. And some of it at the city level. One of the big ones is zoning. And if you have zoning that favors large lots, big houses, you can't go build some of those products and that people would be able to actually afford. In Bloomington, part of what we've done while I've been there is rolled back lot sizes. We've so that and it's not crazy. It's to what a lot of Bloomington was developed at.
It's funny. People criticize my neighborhood. They're kind of tight. There's a big house, and it's a big lot compared to what's in Bloomington.
Yeah.
But you go down to my parents' neighborhood, they're huge lots. Yeah. There's like 7 times as many houses here than there is there. I think that's a win. We needed more doggone houses.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and we do that. And, we have a number of people that would be perfectly comfortable with a smaller house. And we had in Bloomington a requirement for like a 2-car garage. We reduced that to 1 car because we see where transportation is going. We also see, candidly, a lot of seniors have 1 driver. One of the spouses still drives, the other one doesn't. They just have 1 car. They don't need to get to 2 different jobs. And we're seeing that with more and more people. We actually have one of our staff members that their family has 1 car. Because of so things are changing that way, and we're like, let the marketplace figure it out. Like if you want 2 cars and 2-car garage, fine. If you want a 5-car garage and you can afford it, go for it.
My friend, so I got a question for you. You know the side of being a developer or a builder, and you understand the business cases are tough right now, right? Yeah. So if a builder had an opportunity to get a lot inside of a new development, this is different than what you get.
Yeah. You have a builder controlling it.
But I've talked to builders and they're like, look, we know we have to put up townhomes. If we don't put up townhomes, we're not going to make enough money to keep going.
Yep.
And then you have the whole let's be frank. I have a friend. You stop a building. I had a builder friend, and he's no longer around. His company stopped. Most home builders, if you just stop that business, there's not a lot of cash sitting anywhere. There's not a lot of anything. They're the ones that when that recession hit, was there opportunistic stuff going on? Absolutely. Was there all sorts of Ponzi scheming? Yes. And yet they're the ones that lose everything.
Oh, yeah.
When there's a little tightening of, our secondary mortgage market. Interest rates go up and bloop. So they're really, if they are not driving as much profit as possible from everything they touch, and so that's why I'm getting it. There's a question here somewhere.
Okay.
But this idea of, I think you have to incent a builder to take on risk or even lower profits. That's why I like the opportunity zones. We have groups of people that want to increase capital gains taxes. Why wouldn't we reduce capital gains taxes so that they don't have to build mansions and townhomes? Anyways, I see stuff like that I'm like, why would you be a builder and go build low profit, unless the government's giving me money. And then it's like, well, we know what happens there.
Yeah.
Anyways, thoughts?
Well, like you said, a lot of the government funding, especially at the federal level, has been focused on demand and increasing demand without increasing that supply. They're giving money to purchasers to buy a house.
Put rent control. I'm sorry if you guys are considering rent controls.
No, we're not.
But I looked at Egan or St. Paul, and I'm like, wonder what happens to your supply.
Yeah. Yep, it will go down. And we are doing everything we can in Bloomington to be permissive, be a good partner with the building development industry, and frankly, all the business community. We have a project going on in our planning division to look at all of our ordinances that might restrict or hinder small businesses in our community and figure out, like, are we a barrier in some way? You know, we still have to, like, you can't just dump whatever you want down the sewer because we're going to end up having to pay for it as a community when you bust the sewer out.
What do you mean?
Yeah, you know, so we got those balances, like you said, but we're looking at those things. And a lot of communities are. And it really is just trying to get out of the way of the marketplace, let the marketplace work. They'll figure out, how much parking, how much storage, how big a house, what type of siding. They'll figure all those things out in the market. And, there are reasonable parameters that say, we're going to not put an industrial building next to a single family or multifamily next to a residential neighborhood, because we don't really want that noise and odor and potential impacts right next to each other. So that makes sense for zoning. Like, let's make sure we're not disrupting things, but I think we've just got too granular in what we've done there. There are other laws in terms of the code that could offer more pathways to meeting goals without necessarily having that prescriptive, like I talked about before. As an example, cars, they have a standard. You got to meet this standard. They don't do that for houses. No, they tell you exactly how to build it, and if you build it that way, great. Actually, Minnesota and through the association developed a testing standard, and I think somewhere around 70% of the houses in the parade of homes were tested, and they could give you an energy rating for that house.
Cool.
And you could see that energy rating in comparison to any other house. And so those builders were able to go and say, hey, our new house is this efficient. If you're looking at an existing house, I don't know exactly what that house is, but it would have been built to a code here, so it's probably going to use 3 times more energy. Here's what that looks like with today's costs and things, what your savings would be for this new house. So, there are ways that businesses figure out how to market that and sell that value to people.
Yeah, because they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing things to loosen up, multifamily, duplex, triplex?
Yeah.
It's funny. I got a customer who really specializes in helping people. As a young couple or whatever it is, you might buy a duplex. You get some additional mortgage help, and you might live in one side and rent the other side out. And pretty much all of them have been purchased by somebody by now, because they all heard about this in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And I always kind of, it's an interesting thing. What thoughts about that?
Yeah, so actually it's interesting because the residential code, single family code, is actually single family and 2-family dwellings. That's the actual code, and they're combined. And so in Bloomington, we explicitly allow that. You can do that. I actually think most communities do. Where you run into the rub is if it gets beyond 2. But you can build a duplex. They just don't get built a lot, but you can build that on the same lot as a single-family house. What you can't build is a bunch of townhomes. You can't get into like a 4-unit or 8 or anything like that. That's where we run into the rub. And so one of the other initiatives that the Planning Commission and planning staff is working on is what they call the missing middle. And it's those types of projects. It's small apartment buildings, small condo buildings, townhomes, things of that nature. How do we find ways to do that? And the big challenge that we have in Bloomington is we don't have land anymore.
Yeah.
We're almost fully developed, other than a little bit of stuff around the Mall of America, but nobody's going to build a single family house next to the Mall of America.
Yeah.
It's going to be higher density, and we have a lot of things because of the airport and height restrictions.
You have a lot going on in Bloomington. Airport, Mall of America, you get all sorts of, and a lot of industrial stuff. Huge hospitality. I mean,
hospitality is enormous, but we also have Donaldson, Toro, Seagate. Actually, semiconductors are fairly big in Bloomington, which has been a good sector for us in the last few years with the CHIPS Act and stuff like that.
What's the CHIPS Act?
Federal law that's investing in chip manufacturing in the United States.
Get it out of constrained just Taiwan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you recall, that was a huge supply chain challenge during COVID, and they couldn't build vehicles because they didn't have chips to put in them. And I'm
can't get my F-250 because it's requiring this little chip in the
and that's not going to be here for 3 months. So we can build the motor, we can do everything else, but we need the computers nowadays because you got your dashboard, and you got the cameras, and you got all these electronics in vehicles. I'm like, let's just go buy an old car. Maybe
I should buy. There's 2 little side comments, but I want to ask you. When it comes to these, I got distracted by the side comment. You know what really grinds my gears? I buy a new house, I get a new appliance. I want to revoke Energy Star ratings for any company whose appliance goes bad in 2.5 years. There's no way
It
they
happened
deserve
to
that
me.
Energy Star. They are churning those.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is planned obsolescence, and the thought that they get whatever little benefit that GE or whatever it is gets. I don't know where it is, but the thought that that could possibly be Energy Star grinds my gears.
I'm actually with you on that because my refrigerator went out like 2 years in a day.
So here's my idea. I think that we offer tax breaks for people who report their failure when they drop it off, or just at the dump. Don't they all go to the same two places?
Yeah, they all get.
I want to know the model and when it was bought. That's it. And then, anyways, that's what really good. Businesses. You got a lot of businesses, a lot of hospitality, a lot of big corporations, big campuses.
Yep.
Some things have changed. There's some. Talk to me about how much open commercial vacancy rate there is going on in Bloomington. What are the struggles that people are facing, and how does that impact the city?
It's interesting because I think there's a tale of two markets in that office space. The larger office buildings do have vacancies and significant vacancies. They're down. You may have read just recently the Wells Fargo Tower in Bloomington is up for auction. So it got
how
foreclosed.
many office? That's a lot of square feet.
Yeah, it's the oldest Class A building in the city of Bloomington, and so it's a nice office building, a little bit older, but they obviously were struggling probably due to vacancies, and then that reduces rent. Everyone's trying to renegotiate a lower rent because they have vacancies.
But those bonds, well, now that's an old building. It's probably not still financed, but I thought it was interesting that these commercial buildings, you'd think that if they're all empty, that the rental rates will go down. But it's written in the bonding provisions that no, rent has to be this. It doesn't get to go down, and that's why they got to go bankrupt and have somebody else buy it.
Yeah, get rid of that underlying financing and things. So, but the positive side is a lot of the smaller office buildings, either 1-2 tenant office condos up to, maybe 10, 12, something like that. They're actually doing quite well. They have not been hit as much as the large places, and I think the large places are hit a lot more because of the working from home part of it. Yeah. But those small businesses, you still want your office administrator to come in, and most small business people are still going to go into the office, if they have an office, and that's maybe where they're providing service to people, so they got to be there to provide the service to people. We still have our office, and we rotate.
You guys have a physical building.
And so
and it's a multi-tenant. Like it's you.
Yep.
You guys own that
and
building.
A dental office there. Yeah.
That's whenever you can have two different people paying the mortgage. I think that's helpful.
I enjoy that as well. So, and that's another one of the small business things. I mean, my family's always owned our building, cool. And so we paid rent ourselves. Yeah, we built it. Actually broke ground about a month before 9/11.
What?
Yeah. So my parents were a little nervous. Yeah.
The recession, COVID.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot, man.
Yeah.
And here you are.
Yeah, still here, still doing it, and still growing.
But so this commercial building stuff, do you foresee, so what happens to a Wells Fargo building? Do you have a lot of that going on? Or is it
I actually spoke with the city manager about it, and from a city perspective, not much impact. There might be a marginal adjustment. Someone's going to buy it, and there'll be a little bit of adjustment on the valuation of it. But frankly, valuations on those properties had already come down due to COVID and the vacancy rates. It's already been factored into sort of our property tax base. So we're not seeing that it's going to be a big hit. They're current on their property taxes, so even though they're going into foreclosure, they've paid their property taxes for the first half of the year, and second half isn't due yet. So, and once it's sold, we'll be in an even better position to have comfort that we'll get that payment. And I mean, we're the government; we will get paid.
We'll find you.
Yeah.
Get these guys that show up sometimes.
Yeah, because the property tax, if you don't pay them, then whenever there's a transfer of the building or something, they get paid first. The government always gets paid before anybody else. So
yeah. You mentioned that when you approached some of the issues that got you into being a city councilman, and then also the things that you've been passionate about and talking about have to do with housing, and that you framed up that there's a market approach to a lot of this, and yes, we want to be good managers, but let's be smart about it. I'd imagine not all your council members are through 3 terms now, have been as generous towards thinking the market would find a solution, perhaps.
They're open to the conversation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Talk to me about the tensions you have to play. Because you guys, I mean, to be fair, I'm very again, Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell are my boys.
Yeah.
I have Democrat friends that are awesome, people that are way left of me, and I can agree with them and I can agree to disagree. Talk to me about how do you manage the bombastic stuff that happens in politics? I mean, you guys are just managing your city pretty well, but talk to me about it.
And one of the things I will say is the thing I like about being on the city council in a city that is well run with a professional staff, with a council that, really actually works well together, even where we disagree. We've got a lot of 5-2, 6-1, 3-4 votes on big questions, big issues in the community, things like that. Most of the stuff is 7-0 because, of course, we're going to buy salt.
It's pretty
for the
boring
roads.
stuff.
Yeah.
Watching your meetings, like, God, Shawn, how do you do this?
Yeah, but they only last 6 hours.
Yeah.
On a Monday night, get home at 11:30 after the meeting. And so, and Ann's always she's trying so hard to stay awake and be as supportive and listen to me. And I'm just trying to download and relax. And she's there's been plenty of times where I'm talking and the next thing I hear is a snore.
That's funny.
I'm it's okay. It's fine. But
we bought the salt for the, that's funny.
Yeah. But, I think, in a healthy dynamic within a city, that those multiple perspectives are taken in. So what we have in terms of a process usually for those big issues is one or more working sessions where we hear from staff, presentation, we talk about it amongst ourselves, give direction back to staff. They'll maybe bring it back 1 or 2 more times for us to just kind of hone in on the details. And it's really there where you see that stuff. And, if you're going to be an absolutist, it's probably not the best place for you. If you're just going to be, if I don't get my way, I'm out. And so you figure out every issue, what's really important to me. And can I get that in there and kind of talk through with other people what's important to them to get in there and come to a nice solution.
What are some examples of big issues that have come up that you've seen more polarized in cities than what's normal?
Well, I could talk to housing is actually one that I see in a lot of cities. Bloomington actually has been remarkably consistent in its approach of being more flexible to the market, working more directly with developers to listen to their concerns. Also, we have a very strong group of advocates, of affordable housing advocates in particular, that are provide great input into our process.
What are they usually nudging for? So an affordable housing advocate, again, me, the guy that's more supply equals more housing.
Yeah.
And I can be wrong, that's fine. But what are they advocating for? What are they asking the city to do in those?
So sometimes the advocate side, they're asking for things, not rent control, but some rental protections. What we see is some of the older apartment buildings get bought out. They get remodeled at a candidly fairly cursory level, some paint and aesthetic changes, and then the rents go way up. And so the people that were living there can no longer afford that rent and basically get forced out. And in some cases, the building just says, we're just clearing you out. And because we just bought it, your lease is terminated, you're out. You got till the end of the month here to be out. And so we did, work through that process. And so we have some protections that give people, I believe it's 90 days. You can't just kick them out that day. You got to give them some notice that this is coming. You got to give them a chance, right? I mean, this is their house.
As much as people are things get, and I'm not using this term, gentrified, or old housing gets upgraded and nobody can afford it anymore. Well, you also want nice stuff. So then there needs to be companies and capital that are willing to come do that.
Yep.
And yet I've been living here for a long time. I'm on a fixed income or whatever it is. I need an option.
Yeah.
And if we eliminate all those options, it gets a little tough. It's a tension to manage.
It's a huge tension that we got to manage. And one of the other things we do is we do work with the developers that focus on affordable housing. I mean, there are a number of them. Aon has a number of units within there. They've had some issues, not in Bloomington, but on some of the other properties. But just because they got a lot of units to manage and things like that. But there are Dominion. They got properties. And so we work with them as well. And one of the things that we've gone out with our staff and talked with, those apartments that we think might be ripe for sale and turnover with the escalating rents, is our staff works with them and tries to get to know the ownership and say, if you are looking at an exit strategy for whatever reason, talk to us and let's try to at least see if we can do something with one of these companies to preserve those or to preserve some of those affordable units so not everyone is displaced in that process. So, some of it is ordinance and, stick, and some of it's just carrot and, just doing the hard work of building relationships and finding out what the business is doing and where they're at, what they're thinking, because some of these are maybe, something somebody has owned for a number of
60,
years.
20, 30.
Yeah. And they might be like, my kids aren't going to take it over.
Tired.
Yeah, I'm done with this. And, I know I could get a big chunk of money here and I could live the good life. Congratulations. That's super good.
So housing gets people excited and that's attention. I think you just gave me a very reasonable answer.
Yeah.
What are some other things that pop up that might feel more unreasonable? Give me some juicy stuff. Like what? Is there any juicy? I mean,
well, the juiciest one is one that I can see both sides of it. Tobacco. Tobacco's bad product. It's a legal product.
Yeah. Shouldn't do it, but
you can.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up in the city of Bloomington passed an ordinance that fixed the number of licenses for tobacco retailers and basically set that you can't transfer it. So whenever that business, like even if you sell to your kids, the license goes away. You can't sell tobacco anymore. And it was explicitly a strategy to get rid of tobacco in the city of Bloomington. Again, I'm more of a marketplace person, and I'm like, look, adults have the right to do dumb stuff as long as it's not like risking other people.
You do with liquor stores too?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you doing with cannabis? There's a bunch
and
of
we
stuff
did it before cannabis, and I literally said, I was like, so we're looking at a situation where you can't buy tobacco in Bloomington, but you'll be able to buy marijuana.
Yeah.
I'm like, make this make sense. Make this make sense to me. Like, and I'm not saying people should use tobacco. Don't use tobacco.
Yep.
But I just think, that type of restriction on business and commerce is like, if the federal government made it illegal, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that either, but, then we wouldn't have any choice. I just don't know that we needed to do that at the city level.
It's funny when you go to some communities and I'm like, well, no wonder why things are not going well here. There's a liquor store and a strip joint on every other corner.
Yeah.
I can see why this is problematic. Everybody's drunk and on the ground.
Yep.
Like, duh.
Yeah.
And so, like, restricting bad things from being everywhere, I think, is a tool that makes sense. But then also I can see, well, who are you? I mean, just think how disheartening that would be if you ran a good business and that's a big part of your revenue and you guys come in and pluck that away or restrain that. That's tough, man. That's not easy.
I remember talking with one of the convenience store owners after the thing, and he's going back. He's like, what about this? And, he's very passionate about his business and he runs a good business. I mean, and, and I finally had to just tell him, I was like, Steve, I'm with you. Like, I don't know, you're talking, you got to talk to someone else
to do this.
You got to talk to someone else. Like, I voted one way, I didn't win, That's okay. I moved on. I still have total respect for my colleagues. They're great people. They're trying to do what they believe is best for the community, and I believe that in every single decision they've made. We just happen to disagree on that one, and that's fine.
How is Bloomington handling cannabis?
Yeah, we're working through it. We are working through, it's kind of interesting because we looked at our tobacco ordinances and where we allow them, and we looked at our, and we looked at our liquor ones and where we allow those, and we're trying to come up with a way to simplify that for staff so we don't have tobacco can be here and liquor can be there, and cannabis is weird because there's two different types. There's
the stuff we got legalized a couple years ago, so it could kind of be here.
And then you got the real stuff coming, and so but we're restricting the number of locations, and we're restricting proximity to sensitive uses, parks, schools.
Council people's homes. No, I'm just kidding.
No, as close as possible to all the council members.
I got a question for you. I had a customer that I helped who owned a couple businesses. One of them was in California. I have been watching lots of YouTube videos of people doing stories about how the regulations in cannabis are really just forcing the black market. and that the profitability in cannabis is dwindling, and it's either going up to the tobacco companies or big corporations, or it's really black markets. I watched a guy, and he does New York-based stuff, and was sharing how all these convenience stores now have these little black markets of like the other cannabis, and all these goofy drugs and stuff. Like, as a city council person, when you make rules like that, what are the things that you guys have to be aware of? And how do you handle those tensions? And, whose work is it? How do you devote police work to do that, but not to do this? And to like, I just think that that's such a big, like, we're pulling levers that seem problematic and unintended consequences, I guess.
And a lot of it is, frankly, above us. It's state level regulations. What we really have control over is that zoning level regulation of where they can be and what types, because there's actually like 7 or 8 different categories of cannabis, not the cannabis itself, but a cannabis business. So, you've got manufacturing, you've got production, you've got retail, and you got other stuff that I forget what all farming. Of them were. So you've got all those. So, we have different regulations for what you can do in different places. Obviously, we're not going to do a grow place, adjacent to a residential neighborhood. It's an industrial use. It needs to be an industrial area. So then we look at our zoning. Where might this fit? And then we make decisions about, okay, is this a permitted use where you come in and you tell us you're going to open this business and you're like, okay, great, good for you. Thanks for letting us know. Good luck. Or is it a conditional use where okay, that's fantastic. You need to apply and get permission from the planning commission or city council in order to do that. We want to look at that specific area and make sure it's going to work, just in case there's some other legacy type businesses there that it's going to be incompatible with. So
how are you guys handling, and do you even talk to this about enforcement? I know that as soon as the state did a marijuana legalization, which is, what was it, last year? There's a bunch of stuff that got pushed through towards the end there. That was one of them.
Yeah.
And Lakeville immediately passed, you can't smoke in our parks.
Yeah, we did that.
You did that too.
Yeah.
How, what is that going to look like for people as they're walking through parks? It's starting to smell like California in Minnesota. Let's just say that. And it's so obvious. Like, do you guys have say in that with the police? Do the police just look to the state law? Do they how does that work? I don't get it.
So we have city ordinance that says you can't smoke in a park, and the police can enforce our ordinance. Most city ordinances would be a misdemeanor level offense, so they can issue a citation. Okay. And that would be about it. I mean, they're not going to come in.
That's in a park. I can be in my car. So I don't use it. But can people?
I don't think you can be in your car because
you be in the passenger seat.
Well, as long as you don't have the keys.
It's like drinking, right? You can't do anything.
You can't drink in your car, so I don't think you could smoke in your car, even if
I don't know it. I don't use it. I don't think people should use it. Whatever. But
agreed. But it's those are, so you still have the state laws with that, and then actually Minnesota is a pilot test location for a field sobriety test related to marijuana or something like that. Okay, so cool. They're working on how, because that's one of the big things I've heard from law enforcement is like
everybody's out now and they're driving terribly.
Yeah, and they have no way to say that. And the field sobriety tests are very limited in court. They're easy to pick through for a defense attorney. So a lot of times prosecutors don't even want to go there because they're like, we're going to lose. Mm-hmm. They're tough cases to prove. I mean, short of you open the door and they fall out and they're holding the joint in their hand.
But when they're all glassed, I get it. Yeah. I get it. That's a hard one. So in the city, you look up to the state and you see things that might impact your life. It seems like state just hands money out to people. And it's like, however that seems.
They don't hand it to Bloomington. I can tell you that. They take our money and they give it to Lakeville.
Yeah, that's right.
They do that. Fiscal disparities.
So explain that to me. Like, what do you mean?
So there is a regional tax on businesses called fiscal disparities. Goes into a regional pool and then gets
business. So this is business sales taxes.
No, property tax. Business property tax.
Business property tax.
Yeah.
So you who have way more. Well, we're starting to get there, but
yeah.
Continue.
So we have a lot of business in Bloomington. Half of our tax base is business.
Wow.
And which is great for our residents. It helps them out a lot. But our businesses pay into this fiscal disparities, and we are a net contributor. We get zero money out of it. Lakeville actually gets money back from it. St. Paul gets
we don't
money.
have nearly the amount of businesses paying into it. Interesting.
Yeah. So, it rubs me raw a little bit sometimes because I'm like, seriously, you're a growing, developing community with available land. Yeah. We have to redevelop stuff way more expensive. Why aren't we getting
Who concocted this rule? Where did this come from?
Legislature.
All those Republican legislatures, huh?
Yeah, it was the Republicans. And the Democrats. Really? I have no idea. It's been there for so long. No way.
I'm just kidding.
For so long.
When was there a Republican? No, I'm just kidding. They were there.
Yeah, maybe it was Palenti. I don't know. So.
Yeah, it could have been him. He was there for a while.
He was there for a bit.
But what do you see up at the state where you're like, God, this would be interesting to see. This would help us. That's a big one. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense that we would take money out of your community and put it into any other community. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, you look up fiscal disparities and go in there and you can see a list of the places
that meant to fuel Barnesville. It is Rothsay and these places out in the middle of nowhere that have no business. No,
part of it goes to St. Paul.
Twin Cities. Does it really?
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
They run their city really well.
Yeah.
I disagree with everything St. Paul does.
They had to do sales tax to pay to improve their roads, so that's not an ideal situation. So
we spent it all.
Yeah, so we're going to need more for
what percentage of your budget have you been spending over the last 3 terms? Is it always like 101 and you guys are growing, right?
Yeah. Our levy until last year went up about 3% year over year for a number of years. Last year it went up just over 9%.
It's for that water park.
No,
I'm just kidding.
No. There's no city money going into the water park. Actually, part of what we're getting hit by is our fire department. And so we have had the largest paid on call, or what some people refer to as volunteer fire department in the nation.
So you guys have been volunteer.
Yeah.
I saw the one across from your building.
Yep.
I live in Lakeville, volunteer. I saw that one. I'm like, well, look at that.
Yep.
That is different.
Got to have those. So we are in the process of hiring paid firefighters to staff those fire locations so they can get out to calls quicker. We've had too many times where like one person shows up to the call, has to drive the truck themselves. Other people eventually get there, but the timeliness of it is difficult. And if your house is on fire, you want people to be there quickly.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, and there's a big issue. I mean, we have not. Knock on wood, we have not had issues where fires start to jump multiple houses. I mean, it'll maybe melt the siding on the neighbor's house or something like that. We had a garage fire not too long ago that, once it gets going, there's a car in there, it gets going and then melts it. And, another issue that I think you'll appreciate is, one of the issues that the fire department and I talk with the chief about is EV. Because of all that energy in that battery, you can't put those things out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It takes an extraordinary amount of water to put out a fire in an EV vehicle. And you have that in your garage. It just keeps burning and burning.
Interesting.
And, very, very difficult. I mean, they'll have them where they get it out and it'll just start up again because
if you burn an EV car, you also don't get an Energy Star.
Yeah.
You're out.
Well, I mean,
if I got to replace my washer and you burn a green car like that, you are doomed, dude. No longer a hippie. You
got to turn back your $7,500 federal tax
That's
credit.
What should happen.
Yeah.
What happened to it? Well, I burned it. It's the worst thing you could. All your carbon credits are null and void.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So what? Okay, so other state things. I'm just curious, and I know you probably got to get this 451 here, but I'm really enjoying this. What are the things that you see upward? Like, because I know that all politicians, you see things upward, and you think, boy, this seems like, why don't we lean into this? I like your diplomatic approach.
Yeah.
In our very purple state. Like, what things do you see?
So we actually every year approve a legislative agenda. We have a breakfast meeting with all of our legislative representatives that impact Bloomington. We also have our county commissioner there as well, Met council there as well. You're right, some of these issues become, how far do we want to lean into this? How much of an impact does it have on Bloomington? We stick to Bloomington-related issues. We don't jump in.
When you say lean into it, you mean go tell them, like, look, this is hard for us to understand.
We don't want to go too public on some things and start bashing people. Like, if I encourage you to look up Chief Hartley and watch some of his videos. He said some things with regards to the Hennepin County prosecutor. And, but in terms of our legislative agenda, we wouldn't want to necessarily push too hard against the prosecutor's office because we have to work with them for every criminal. And we have our own prosecutors that do misdemeanors in the city of Bloomington. So we work very closely with the county. And so we've got tensions between those and how far we go there. But there's frustration amongst, police officers about, this person had 17 warrants. Like, at what point do we just keep them in there and adjudicate this and not let them back out? There's, concerns about safety. That seems
like, to me, there seems to be a thing right now of, do criminals get sent to prison or not? Like, and do you keep letting them do it or not? It seems like that's the big thing that's changed over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
I mean, would you affirm that that's a thing that is?
It's a very much a concern. I do hear from people on both sides of it in terms of overall rates and facts, and crime rates in Bloomington are at decades low in Bloomington right now.
They went up. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
they're on the side.
They might go to where there aren't police. And,
there's no drug money there anymore.
So, but Bloomington has. A lot of benefits because of its location that we talked about. But we also, we have 494, 35, Cedar, all going through, or a parallel. That's a lot of people going through there. We have a lot of people just moving through our community, tons of hotel rooms, some of which are not very expensive. And so, we have challenges that a lot of other communities don't have to deal with.
How many police do you have?
I'm going to have to check. I think it is just shy of 200. What I can tell you is we are actually overstaffed. The Chief Hodges asked us if we would overstaff for a couple of years because they know they have retirements coming, and so they wanted people in position when those retirements happen that they didn't have to then go find someone, then train them and everything, that they were able to just move straight into there. So he asked us to fund that. We did. And we've been fully staffed all through COVID, all through some of the calls for police reform and things like that. We stood by our police department because they've demonstrated their excellence. And as the chief always says, hey, it's not a blank check. Yeah. We can't just do whatever we want and all that. But, as long as we're earning the trust of the community, we know we have a council that'll stand behind us. Cool. But that's not really directly to state. But we do work with them for the state on police issues. We were directly involved in a lot of conversations regarding police reforms, some of the stuff with school resource officers and things like that. Even with
how did that go? Because that was pretty spicy for
that was pretty spicy. We maintained our conversation, and we never took our officers out of schools in Bloomington. We kept them there. We have one at each high school assigned directly to that. Then we have, I believe, 2 assigned to share over the 3 middle schools. And then we have, we don't have officers directly in the elementary schools, but we have officers assigned to check in and be kind of a liaison to them. So we have sort of an overlap.
What was the vote split on that issue?
It never got brought up for a vote. So we never considered. I think there was, to be fair, I think we had a discussion about it, and that was it. There was no one was like, no, we're okay. The police made a recommendation that we keep them in partnership with the school recommendation. We're like, okay. That's cool. Did that. And then, but of course, our chief and others are working at the state level to make sure that, hey, let's make sure that we got a good balanced set of rules here. We obviously don't want our police officers doing anything unethical to a student.
They can be the biggest thugs if they wanted to be. Like a police breaking the law and not obeying any of that can be the worst. They're the biggest gangsters there are.
Yep.
And yet, they're our biggest heroes, and they need to take care of us. It's like...
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you see people who are very, very pro-police right up until they disagree with what the police did in one situation. But I do like how they can compartmentalize. They're like, oh, it's those police there. Like, all the other police are great, but those police, that was bad. And we weren't required. We looked at, I think 7 years ago, body cameras. We've been doing body cameras for that. So we had that.
I have a proposal. Guess what? I think everybody that's paid by the government should wear a body cam. All of you. All of you. That's my policy right there.
Yeah. Here's what I think is, I think the state should be subject, the legislature should be subject to the same laws that of not open meeting laws, but the disclosure laws. So FOIA, like
conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I actually personally think this is how wild I am. I didn't really mean the body cam, but there's a bunch of them. Like, I don't know.
Well, the state legislature doesn't have to provide emails. If you ask if you do a data request, the legislature is exempt from having to provide their email communication. City employee, city council member is not exempt for that, except in one case. There is one exemption that we have, and that is communication. Just
about Chick-fil-A.
No. Yeah. So no, between us and a constituent, just one constituent, so that we aren't sharing.
Because you're supposed to represent them.
You were representing them. So if they tell us something, it doesn't automatically become like public record.
Yeah.
So we can go back and forth and clarify that. Yeah. But if we take that and then we send that to staff and say, hey, we need to help address this. That then is public record. So some of that is just nuanced. When you become a council member, you kind of learn, like, should I just send the whole email? Because sometimes people put stuff that is not necessarily just part of the concern. They put a lot of other stuff, and maybe some of that personal stuff. Or, hey, here's how I know you, and I know your kids, and my kids go here. I'm like, well, I don't want to make that any type of public record, so I'll take the question and send it to staff and say, hey, can you help me answer this question? Because, we've got almost a $200 million budget and over 600 employees. And so I don't know everything off the top of my head about everything. And even when I do, I'm pretty confident. I still ask, like,
so here's
just
my
to
spicy
clarify.
one. You have 600 employees.
Yeah.
Would they ever vote to reduce their own revenue? Hey, your likelihood of getting, because there's some conservatives in there. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I think that is there not a conflict of interest of people who can vote a certain way to increase the coffers of their employer that would pay them?
So, the only one that can vote to increase the coffers is the city council. We control the budget. So they can make a proposal to us and bring us forth a budget, which they do every year, but they don't get to vote on it. And we have actually eliminated
state and federal.
Oh, state and federal.
I think government employees should have either a diluted or no vote. Mm-hmm. That's how crazy I am. Because I think that there's no way I'd be like, well, let's see, I want to raise in the next 3 years. So I could either vote for this guy who wants to actually live within the budget.
Yeah.
Or these other guys that love my vote and the ACLU and all the union. Anyways, that's my. Yeah. I think there's a conflict of interest there. I don't like it. Anyway.
So and that's fair. In the city of Bloomington, we have eliminated services, and some of them there are people in the community that disagreed. We eliminated the DMV that we had there, partially because Edina redid the county service center, and they do all that plus a lot of other stuff there. And Edina's not that far from Bloomington. Yeah, it's just kind of like
you don't even know you're in Edina. Yeah. Am I still in Bloomington?
Yeah, and we were losing money. We were subsidizing the DMV, which is supposed to be paid for by the fees that you go there, but the state sets the rate of the fees, and it's not enough to cover the cost of providing the service.
I bet.
And so
that sentence right there, I would love to know every program in Minnesota that is set that way. I don't know if there's lots of them, but there's got to be some.
Yeah, there's
them DNR guys, they're doing all right.
They get funded. They get funded.
Look at that truck they got.
Yeah, and the boat, and they get the whole thing. Yeah. It's awesome. That is a great job to get into. Honestly, that'd be
I know one. Yeah, and he likes his job.
Yeah. But we also we did a fleet maintenance review, and one of the recommendations was we maintained our own parts inventory for the vehicles, and they maintain all the big trucks, the plow trucks, plus all of the city vehicles, including police and stuff.
The most immediate way a civilian gets service from the city.
Yeah.
Besides electricity and water.
Yep. And but we actually eliminated our parts department and outsourced it to another company that did it for multiple communities, saving us money I mean, obviously an
Who
impact on
initiated
those.
that? Like, did the whole group say, "Hey, we should do this audit and figure
It
this
came
out?"
down from the city manager's office that he
cool.
went through and do reviews of departments on a regular schedule and go through and see what we could do to be more efficient, provide better service, because that, there is always that balance of service quality with cost. One of the conversations we're actually going to be having coming up here is about plowing of sidewalks in Bloomington. The city plows all the sidewalks. In other communities, people shovel them themselves.
I'm supposed to shovel, and my new neighbors do not know they're supposed to shovel. And the developer, all these, like, there's no houses there. I'm like, what is this? I want to go for a walk.
Yeah, so we're having that discussion. And interestingly, another part of the discussion is because we get complaints about it, because what's great is we plow that, and then the city plow goes by and puts all the stuff from the road onto the sidewalk.
A little grass and does this and that.
So we've got all those types of things going on, and so there's actually been conversations about not reducing the amount of service, but actually increasing it. So we'll see how that conversation goes. I think right now the general direction is to sort of reduce that, put a little bit more, but we'll still take and maintain core routes like safe routes to schools, safe routes to we got a bunch of commercial nodes, so you could probably get to those. But, stuff inside of neighborhoods and things like that, we probably would not do because they're just not used enough, or the users can take care of them.
Interesting. Those are interesting. Like, I always think it's easy for people to shoot at people running in government and working in government or politicians. And it's I think where you guys are at, you're really doing the most immediate work that people. Yeah. It's kind of funny. I'm pretty conservative and I'm pretty liberty leaning in most things, and yet when it comes to your local communities, that's where you want to add the most value as possible. Yeah. And I don't think we would agree on every single thing out there, but I like how you are very diplomatic in how you do things, and you're shrewd and you're wise, and I think we actually agree with almost everything. I could sit here and ask you questions forever. Yeah. Here's my last one, I guess. Like, what are you most hopeful for? What does the future go? So you got kids, one of your daughters just graduated?
23 and 20. Yeah. So working, finding their way in life. And so that's fantastic. Always a journey with family and kids. And so just blessed to be able to be in their life.
What's the next 5 years, 10 years look like? Whatever you can share. What are you excited about?
Yeah, we're still working to grow new spaces. We've got some opportunities in addition to growing our core design build business. I do own another company that does skylights. Haven't really had the time to focus on that as much. But we're working and looking at an exterior division that would be part of. So it'd be skylights, windows, doors, siding, roofing, that sort of thing.
And
so
you guys would do a good job at
that. And kind of, take a different approach than other exterior contractors because of our sort of design educational background. Yeah. Kind of keep that same philosophy.
You could door knock for politics and for hail damage.
Yeah, exactly. People love the hail damage almost as much as the car warranty. So if I could just get in the car warranty business, I'd be great.
First off, my name's Shawn and I'm running for city council. Yeah. Second off, can I inspect your roof?
Yeah.
Third of all, I can clean your shoes. No.
Yeah, I'm full service here. I just take care of everything in one meeting. So
that's funny.
Yeah, and that's always been an interesting thing for me, though, of how much to combine those things. Like, because I am there to serve the community. I am not there to grow my business or promote my business.
Yeah. I don't keep exploitative.
Yeah, I don't keep them hard separated. I talk about it. I'm very proud of what I do as an entrepreneur and my company and the stuff that all my team has done. And so I do share that. It's part of my campaign. I always talk about that, but not out on the door handing out 2 cards, like, here's my council card, here's my business card. I notice your kitchen's not looking so good. So, and that hail damage.
You see these windows right here? Yeah. That's water damage.
Yeah, it's no good. I can help you. So, but, I think in the next 5 years, I plan to run again. So that would be, the end of it. I got 1 more year, and then there'll be another 4 years after that if the community chooses to keep me on board, or if they want to go another direction. I respect that. That's their choice. I believe in the people. Yeah. Let them vote.
Yep.
that's what we do.
Vote often, vote early, and vote multiple times, right?
This is not Illinois. This is Minnesota. So, we got a great city clerk's office that does a really good job with all that stuff.
Cool.
So,
that's cool.
And then, I'll probably still be doing that. Hopefully still doing that, growing the company. And, I don't try to dictate to my kids where they're going to go and what they're going to do. And, my wife and I are, looking at some point, we're going to retire and what does that look like, and just kind of making sure we're doing the things we need to do right now with, making sure with the 401ks and investments and insurances and all of that stuff. So we're positioned to do those things. Would you go somewhere, would you leave Minnesota? I'll probably never fully leave Minnesota.
Okay, so if you're going to partly leave, where would you partly leave to?
It's going to sound completely bizarre, but Las Vegas.
Manitoba.
We'd like it to be much colder.
Worse than it is now.
Yeah. We want to go somewhere.
Sheboygan. No.
I heard
Las Vegas. Okay, so why Las Vegas?
So we actually went out there for a little while during COVID because
that's right.
My wife and daughter were actually both doing online school at the time, and I could work remotely, and fell in love with the area. And I'm not talking about like what everybody thinks of the Strip, but the hiking around there in Red Rock, and you're like, 3 hours from Zion or 3.5 hours. We camped out in Death Valley, and literally, if you want to go swimming in the ocean, it's less than a day's drive to go there. You can just go for a weekend, go to the ocean, even though you're in the middle of a desert. And, it doesn't hurt. It's a vibrant community. It's got a ton of stuff going on. The city that we stayed in was Henderson.
Oh, yeah.
They have, I think, 12 dog parks. Yeah. We got 3 dogs. Love my dogs.
Oh, really? What kind of dogs do you have? I saw one was a beagle.
2
Beagle
beagles.
Bailey, right?
Yeah, Beagle Bailey.
I was snooping
and then
on
we have Buddy the Beagle. And then we have Smidge, which we don't really know what Smidge is. A rescue, a little cute black dog. And it's just,
Well, your beagles just go. I've been around, they just I want to chase a fox for the next 7 weeks.
So Bailey is not a runner, is a walker. So when she goes, just kind of walk behind her, and she's the smallest of the dogs. You just got to pick her up, and it's fine. Buddy can run, and Buddy will go, and has twice. Somehow got across in rush hour traffic, like 5:30 or something, went across Normandale Boulevard in Bloomington.
No.
Yeah, unscathed, got across there, and looked for a few hours. Finally found him. He was burrowed in behind someone's fence.
That's
I think he just kind of got stuck because he was just going and this people had this fenced yard, but it wasn't fenced on the back. It was just the front and the side yard.
I want to be there.
And they just got there, and he's like, well, I can't keep going.
Now what do I do?
Now what do I do? So Beagle, Buddy just laid down there, and so we found him, and then but he was missing for over 2 days one time in a snowstorm. He got away from my daughter. She slipped on the ice, and he took off, and it took us 2 days.
Those beagles, man, they're just built to go, built to run.
He went into a wooded area very close to Jefferson High School, and but got his leash tangled around a tree, so he was stuck in there. But it was this snowstorm with a ton of wind and everything, so people in that area didn't know. And of course, because of things I know about marketing, so we're out looking for the dog, but I instantly set up a business page for my beagle and start advertising on it. I geo-target it to my neighborhood.
What?
Yeah, geo-targeted, let my dog's missing, help me find the dog, that type of stuff, gave a description and all that.
That's awesome.
So my wife was working with the organizations that help find dogs. We're calling the dog pound. But
that would be so sad if you lost.
Yeah.
We have this French bulldog right now, and it's the most... That dog is not supposed to exist. Yeah. It's this face doesn't work. The body doesn't work. It's this little, we call him our potato because he's just this round. He snores so bad I don't let him in our room. At night, he's not allowed to sleep in he sleeps with the girls.
Okay.
So get out of here. But he's good. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for sharing. I hope this is an encouragement for people. I love the way you dynamically process things, and I really enjoy it.
I appreciate the time. Always good to see you.
Yeah.